you have your problems like every other couple. And then you throw step kids and step parents and everything else in it. It can get stressful. It can get tough. But as far as this text message in the order, April is talking to a third party who she considered a friend at the time. She was venting right after a terrible fight. And she said, basically saying, I'm this, I'm that. And then says we were fighting face to face. We had our faces pressed against each other, fighting. And that I squeezed her until she couldn't breathe. And then the third party says, in another conversation, the third party uses the term headbutt. Nobody headbutted anybody. Nobody in our relationship ever hit anybody. And I'm going to say this. If you're a friend of mine and a friend of April's, look at how we were together. Look at how the two of us were. Use your eyeballs, use your experiences. Not in a million years. Not in a million years would I ever physically hurt her. Not in a million years would she ever physically hurt me. So April and I are having this fight. We're in the kitchen. And I mean, it's getting bad. It's every bad fight you have. It's that. It's the first bad fight of our marriage. It is just, throwing everything back and forth at each other. Threaten, let's just call it then. Let's just be done. Let's just, that whole throw your hands up thing. And then, at one point I go, then go back to Litchfield. And she's like, I don't want to fuck. That kind of shit. It's one of those fights. So then as we're fighting in the kitchen, the kids come upstairs. Rule number 1 of parenting, you do not fight in front of your children. So as the kids come upstairs and we are nose to nose. I can't, you fucking this and that. And we're fighting. Kids come upstairs. Here's my mistake. I wrap my arms around April and I go, we can't fight in front of the kids. We're not going to do this in front of the kids. We'll pick this up later or we'll go upstairs. She gets off of me. She didn't want to be touched. That was the squeezing. Total bullshit. I didn't want to fight in front of the kids. However, if you ever be in a fight and you touch someone or you hug someone, they don't want to be touched, they don't want to be hugged. Yeah, that doesn't go well. I touched her when she didn't want to be touched. That's it. So then she goes for a drive. She goes and texts a third party, venting. I get a text from a third party a couple days later, critical of April, saying that, the kids said that she was fighting with you in front of and I'm like, no, that's not, we stopped it, blah, blah, blah. Just kind of that a little too involved, like nosy shit. Like, no, we're fine. So April and I have this big, massive fight. She goes venting to someone who she thought was a friend. That then gets used 2 years later, that gets used to get this order. I mean, a big fight between a couple, no abuse, and this really sucks because April's perspective would be really important here because there was a third party that used the term headbutt. April never used headbutt. I never used headbutt. We were face to face arguing quietly. That whole thing where you're saying shit, but you don't want people to hear, so you're this close. God, you just make me so mad. That kind of thing. Total horseshit. This idea of a headbutt. In fact, I'm a little mad that I even need to address this because it came out. Nobody hit anybody ever in our relationship. Matter of fact, this was the worst fight we'd ever had. I would say even the fights about and all that weren't as bad as that. I mean, they were bad. If you've ever fought with someone who's using stuff like that, it can get crazy because it's people in two different realities. This was the worst fight we'd ever had. And then it got made public in an order that, how do I say this? I do believe this order was, I believe that this order was used in many ways. I believe this order was used in many ways. And I believe the thing that the order was to protect from, that text had nothing to do with it, in my opinion. In my opinion, I don't think that text had anything to do with the point of the order, but it's in there anyway. Nothing you can do. April and I have talked about this specific fight on the air. April and I have talked about this giant stack of papers that got released on the air. We've discussed it, but it went public. We address it. Now, here's what I'll say about that text part, and I'll talk about the other stuff that's in the order. Here's what I'll say about the text part. If you ever think that April and I ever had that kind of relationship, get off my side. Honest to Christ. If you think that her and I, if you've seen us together, if you've watched us together, if you ever think that either of us would do that to one another, honestly, I guess our relationship is different than I thought it was, because there is no way I've never hit a human being outside of a boxing ring. I put Tony Rodriguez in a headlock senior year of baseball because he charged at me like a retard with his head down. Stupid. Why you just grab him like that and you hold him? Still got suspended. Never hit anyone outside of a boxing ring. So we have the bad fight. What's funny is April and I made up that night. April and I were fine that night. We had a terrible fight. I would say we had probably 3 of these fights our whole relationship. And every time we came to an understanding, we were better within 12 hours. It was couples fight. It happens. So we make up. Again, I'm looking at my notes here because I don't want to. I had to negotiate last night with another party. So to figure out what I could say and what I couldn't say, so I didn't end up in trouble over this. Obviously, our marriage went on for 2 more years after this horrible thing where the bullshit accusation here. That, by the way, April never made. April never made an accusation that I hit her. Never once. That accusation came from the words of a third party. Never, ever. Not, as the title of the episode says, not once, not ever. So our marriage goes on for 2 more years. So I'm sorry, but a marriage that goes on for 2 more years, pretty much happily for that 2 years, and then we know what happened next, the next half of that 2.5 years. But the marriage continues on for 2 years. Fine. Going great.